Now, sir, about 6 months before you attended Pig and Wheezy's trial, did you have another interaction with the defendant on Maple and Kilpatrick? Yes. And again, what was the significance of Maple and Kilpatrick to you? It was the area I controlled. And this interaction, was this in about 2012? Yes. Can you describe the interaction with Mr. Span on Maple and Kilpatrick? Well, I had a couple incidents with him right there. So why don't you tell me about the first one? The first one was this little guy lived in the building and was serving customers outside the building where another one of them little guys work at. And he told them he couldn't do that no more. He called Brother Man, so they called me, and we all pulled up. And when Brother Man found out it was me out there, he went on and left. So you said there was a guy selling outside the end of the building? Lil Boss lived in the building and he was coming out, serving customers in front of the building, but somebody else was already working out there. Got it. So you said Lil Boss was serving outside of the building? Yes. And when you say he was serving, what does that mean? Selling narcotics. Do you know what he was selling? No. And had you met Lil Boss before? Not formally, no. Did you know of Lil Boss? Yes. And you said Lil Boss was serving outside the building but someone else was already selling there? Yes. Who was selling there? One of my little guys. One of your little guys? Yes. And what does that mean? One of my little guys was working on that block already selling narcotics. You said Lil Boss called Mr. Span? Yes. Why did Lil Boss call Mr. Span? Because he had an incident with the guy on the block about him having customers sitting there serving them, so they had a verbal altercation. They had a verbal altercation? Yes. Sir, I'm going to show you Government's Exhibit 138, which is already in evidence. Do you see that? Yes. Do you recognize that individual? Yes. Who's that? Lil Boss. And so you said Lil Boss called Mr. Span? Yes. And you said Mr. Span showed up? Yes. He showed up on Kilpatrick and Maple? Yes. How did he show up? In a rental car. Was anyone else in the rental car with him? No. Did Mr. Span say anything to you? No. What did Mr. Span do? He talked to the shorty on the block, and he said he told him everything was cool. They ain't going to do that no more, and they pulled off. Did Lil Boss leave with Mr. Span? Yes. Were you out there when Mr. Span pulled up in the red burgundy rental car? Yes. Do you know if Mr. Span saw you? I kind of think he saw me. Why did you think that? Because I was standing in the middle of the street. You were standing in the middle of the street? Yes. Sir, you said you had have interactions with Mr. Span on Maple and Kilpatrick in 2012. Is that right? Yes. What was the second one? The second one was I was standing by the ice cream truck and him and another guy pulled up in another rental car, and when I'm getting ice cream for the little kids, they pull up on me. He like, "Man, you standing outside with your sandals on?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got my sandals on. What that mean, man? You tripping." So Mr. Span pulled up in another rental car, you said? Yes. And I'm sorry, did you say what kind of car it was? No. Do you remember? No. So Mr. Span pulled up and you were in front of an ice cream truck? Yes. You were getting ice cream for the kids, you said? Yes. So there were kids around? Yes. And what did Mr. Span say to you? He asked me why I have some sandals on. Did you have sandals on? Yes. And what did you say to Mr. Span? I ain't worried about nobody. Was Mr. Span in the car with anyone? Yes. Why did you say I wasn't worried about anybody? Because he asked me, 'cause why I didn't have full shoes on. And what did that mean? Like, how can you run or do anything with sandals on? Why would you have to run? Just in case somebody was trying to shoot you or rob you? And were Mr. Span or the other individual in the rental car armed? The light-skinned guy on the passenger side was, yes. And could you see the gun? Yes. Did they do anything after you said that you weren't worried? A car rolled by and I upped my gun, let them see I had a gun on me, so I let them know I wasn't worried about it. So you showed your gun to let him know that you weren't worried about it? Yes. What did Mr. Span and the light-skinned man in the car do? They said, "All right, we'll holler at you later," and he pulled off. Sir, did you recognize the light-skinned man in the car with Mr. Span? I don't know his name, but I knew his face 'cause he's a light-skinned guy that I seen frequently come get the boy little boss from right there on the block. Do you remember what kind of hair the light-skinned man had? He had dreads. Your Honor, if I may, I have one moment. You need the ELMO? No, Your Honor. If I could just have a moment. I'm sorry. Okay. And let's see. If I could have the podium computer, Your Honor? Okay. I think you're on the computer. You had a picture up a second ago. Here we go. Sir, do you see Government's Exhibit 101 in front of you? Yes. Do you recognize that person? Yes. How do you recognize that person? From being associated with Brother Man? Was this the light-skinned man that was in the car with Mr. Span? I believe so. And you said that you recognized him to be an associate of Mr. Span's? Yes. And you don't know his name, though, sir? No. Your Honor, I'm about to move into another section with the recordings. Would you like me to continue, or... We've only been going a little more than an hour and 10 minutes. Why don't we go for another 10 or 15 minutes? Sure. Mr. Young, I'm going to go back to 2003. When were you arrested for your 2003 conviction? 2002. And what were you arrested for? Distribution of heroin and possession of a weapon. Distribution of heroin, and you said possession of a weapon? Yes. Who arrested you? It was a multiple group arresting me. You said a local group? Multiple. Multiple groups. Were there state and federal law enforcement? Yes. And when you were arrested, did you talk to the law enforcement officers and admit your conduct? Yes. Did you give the officers information about a number of different people? Yes. About how many people did you talk about roughly? I can't even count. Was it a lot of people? Yes. And did you testify in federal trials against some of the people that you offered information about? Yes. Before today, have you ever testified about Mr. Span in court? No. When you were arrested in 2003, were you taken into custody? Yes. So you were in jail? Yes. At some point, were you physically released from jail? Yes. And when was that? July of 03. So you were physically released from jail in July of 03? Yes. Were you allowed to go back and live at home? No. Why not? Because part of the agreement was I had to get locked up at night. So you said you had an agreement. Part of your agreement was to be locked up at night? Yes. What was this agreement? That I was going to cooperate with the government. You were going to cooperate with the government? Yes. What did you do as part of your cooperation? Collected information on different individuals that was the target of the day. How would you get this information? I don't understand the question. How would you get information from these individuals? Oh, on a recorded device. Would you meet with them in person? Yes. Would you make phone calls to them? Yes. And were these conversations with individuals, they were recorded, you said, on both telephone calls and in-person meetings? Yes. Did you purchase narcotics as part of your cooperation? Yes. Did you buy guns as part of your cooperation? Yes. You said you were still in custody and not allowed to go back and live at home, right? Yes. And you went into custody every night? Yes. How did that work? In the morning, they'll come get me, debrief me, and let me know who they wanted me to talk to. I go out, talk to them, get the information. At night, they come back in, we'll debrief, and they lock me back up. You said someone would come and get you in the morning, and then you'd meet with them. You'd go out, get information, come back, debrief, and then you'd go back. You'd get locked up again? Yes. Who would meet you in the morning? CPD. Were there rules that you had to follow while you were out? Yes. What were some of those rules? Stay in eye contact. If the pager go down, change the battery, stuff like that. You said you had to maintain eye contact? Surveillance contact. I see, surveillance contact. So you had to be within contact of someone conducting surveillance? Yes. Who was conducting surveillance? CPD. So they were watching you? Yes. Were they watching the people that you were talking to as well? Yes. You also said that you had to make sure that the pager's battery didn't run out? Yes. What does that mean? Because sometimes the battery go down, you had to change the battery in it so they can hear what was going on all the time. So you had a pager on you that CPD was able to listen to? Yes. And this was 2003, right? Yes. So they were using a pager? A pager and a cell phone. You said you were while you were meeting with people in person, were some of those conversations recorded? Yes, all conversations was recorded. All conversations were recorded? Yes. Did you also make recordings while you were having telephone conversations with people? Yes. How would that work? They would put a device on the phone and we would make phone calls. And where would the phone calls be made from? In the police station. Would there be a police officer in the room with you while you made the phone calls? Yes. The recordings you made in person, would you always be visible to the officers conducting surveillance? Majority of the time, yes. Were there times where you weren't? Yes. When were some of those situations? When you was inside of a building or something. And did you begin your cooperation? Well, this part of your cooperation, making recordings in about July 2003, you said? Yes. That's when you were released from jail and began going out during the day and then coming back at night into the jail? Yes. And did you cooperate with Chicago Police Department until about November of 2003? Yes. Did you only meet with one person during those 5 months? No. Did you only meet with one person per month? No. Did you meet with multiple people per week? Yes. Did you meet with sometimes multiple people per day? Yes. Did you only make one phone calls to one person during those 5 months? No. Did you only make phone calls with one person during a particular month? No. Did you talk to multiple people multiple times a day? Yes.